ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्भूतभूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्रचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां गुरुपरम्पराम् So we are seeing right now the Pramana Vichara, the epistemology, and in that, of course, we started with the Nyaya system, Astika Nyaya system, and in every system, the three things have to be seen for basically studying any system of philosophy. You require to study epistemology first. Second is metaphysics, and the third is the prayojana vichara. I mean the purpose. What is the purpose? Ultimately, what do they talk about? The purpose, the goal of life, etc. So three things have to be studied. The first thing is pramana vichara, and that we have started this in a Nyaya system that they accept four pramanas. And pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, and shabda. And Vedantis accept six pramanas. So two more. That is, we also accept arthapatti, and we also accept anupalabdhi also. And even Mimamsakas, one of the school of Mimamsakas called Bhattas, they also accept six pramanas. Anyway, and then in this Pramana Vichara, we were discussing that what is an evidence of Pramana. Evidence of Pramana, I mean evidence of entire world is based upon a Pramana. You definitely a Pramana is presupposition of a Pramana should be there in order to arrive at a Prameya. Anything in category. Prameya means any category. They talk about 16 categories. One of that is Pramana also. Other 15 categories you can know through Pramana. Because they are all objects of knowledge. So definitely you require means of knowledge. That is Pramana. But then how do you know the means of knowledge? So the objects of knowledge, various categories you know through the... objects of knowledge are known through means of knowledge. But how do you know the means of knowledge? So that was a question, and Nayayikas could not much answer because they say they thought it is self-evident. It is not self-evident. Pramana is self-evident. Pramana means the senses, suppose. Senses are not self-evident. Mind is not self-evident. So etc. Well, they are all made up of ultimately elements. And therefore they cannot be self-evident. Inert thing cannot be self-evident. Self-evident is consciousness. But anyway, so the pramana is Who provides an evidence of pramana? Pramana provides evidence to the prameya. What provides evidence to pramana? Nagarjuna's, well, he actually raised this question to Nayayikas. And then they could not answer. This Nagarjuna was very happy by defeating Nayayikas in this aspect. But Nagarjuna himself could not answer because they are Shunyavadis. Nagarjuna was one of the Shunyavadi in Bauddhas, very, very popular, very great logician. They also could not answer. Because for them there is nothing is evident. Everything is Shunya, ultimately. And therefore, well, they don't accept. First thing is you have to accept an existence. Well, but you don't accept. So therefore, they could not answer. And ultimately then we said, yeah, that the Sakshi reveals Pramana. Actually, Pramata reveals Pramana. So, but we'll discuss that part. Well, if the superimposition, Adhyasa, etc. is there, that is discussed in the Brahma Sutra. But before that, Vijnanvadis also, they jumped into the discussion. While we were discussing this thing with the Shunyavadis, this Vijnanvadi also jumped. And they say there is no existence of the creation. You are talking about evidence of pramana by which the prameya that this world is known. But this is not existent. The external world is not there. What is there is just an internal world. And therefore, there is, then we have to now open a front with them. And so then we said, here also a discussion of pramana only. That through pratyaksha, external world is, is siddham. It is evident through pratyaksha pramana, and therefore there is external world, etc. And in that we gave several arguments also, Anvaya Vyatirika, etc. And we also said then mind is there, need not be external world is there. But external world also is there and mind also is there. That kind of a different experiences we have. One experience in which just a mind is there. And there is another experience which is very, 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 very different from the first experience, in which you feel you have an experience of external world. Like you are sitting in a class and thinking about your friend. Now friend exists, but it is just in the form of a thought. It is smriti. Smriti is vritti matram. So the friend is there, but the friend is in the form of a thought when you are sitting in a class. And when the class was over, and then you went to his place and met him. At that time also friend thought is there, but external friend also is there. That experience you have. Two experiences you cannot say they are same. When you were remembering your friend and when you were meeting your friend, both experiences are different that you know very well. So there you are not able to say that when you are meeting your friend, you are not saying that I am just remembering my friend. You are saying you are meeting an external friend. So external world is there, other than just in the form of a thought, just in the form of a mind. And therefore, there is an external world other than Vijnana Matram. Well, you say that just mind. Mind is external, in Vijnanam. Well, there is an external world which is there other than in the form of a mind. So there is internal world, external world, etc. And that argument we did. And then we thought, let's deal with this person who says there is internal world which is a momentary in the form of a consciousness, momentary consciousness, etc. Kshanika Vijnanam, etc. Well, we say we want to deal with him because this view is just opposite to the view of Vedantin. Vedantin says consciousness is nityam. It is not momentary, it is eternal. And they say it is momentary. So we say we are showing now a fallacy in this Kshanik Vijnanavada. First, see, the Kshanik Vijnani says that, well, I am Kshanikam. Naturally, momentary consciousness. Consciousness is I, Atma, and therefore I am Kshanikam. I am momentary consciousness, etc. So Shankaracharya ji says, this is there in Brahma Sutra Bhashyam, where this sutra we were discussing, na abhavaha upalabdehe, in that sutra itself, this is there, in that Bhashyam. So, I am momentary consciousness, he says, Kshanik Vijnani says, that's the truth, there is nothing external, I am in world. So, I am momentary consciousness. Shankaracharya says, how do you know that you are momentary? How do you know? Say, well, you cannot, if you are a Kshanikam, you cannot know you are Kshanikam. So, in Advaita Makaranda, there is a verse which says, Nacha swajanma nashamba drashtum arhati kasyana tauhi prag uttara bhavaha charama prathama kshanau. I am a momentary consciousness means what? I am born, I know. I am now dead, I know. Naturally, the person who knows his own birth and death, he can say that I am momentary. So, this particular moment I am born, this particular moment I am gone. If both you have to experience, then you can say you are momentary. Otherwise, you cannot say. So, nacha swajanma nashamba. See this. Nacha swajanma nashamba drashtum arhati kasyana. Tauhi prag uttara bhavaha charama prathama kshanau. Person cannot experience one's own birth and one's own death. And if you can't experience your own birth and death, in that case you are momentary. How will you know? Both you have to experience. Then you should say, well, I lived, this man. The person who lived 60 years, he should be there to tell that I lived 60 years. The person is gone. He won't say. Others say that he was here for 60 years on this earth. He can't say. One cannot experience one's own birth, one's own death. Anyway, we'll analyze further. So, I can always experience a moment after death. I can also experience a moment I can experience a moment after birth, and I can also experience a moment before death. You cannot experience birth and death. After death, you can experience it. The first moment itself you can experience. Before death, the last moment also you can experience that way. Last moment means you should understand what I am saying. Before death. But death itself, that phenomena, you cannot experience. The birth itself also you cannot experience. Then how will you say you are momentary? One who says I am momentary has to experience both. Well, and so, and then, well, of course, the definition of birth and death is given. Or experience of birth and death is given, which I will explain you. Like, a person is born, a child is born, and then the other person says this child is born. He experienced the birth of a child. So, other person says he is born. What is the experience of birth? Then, Advaita Makaranda says, Tauhi prag uttara bhavaha charama prathama kshanau. See, this prag charama kshanaha. Prag abhavaha charama kshana. I'm sorry, prag uttara bhava charama kshana. So, prag abhava charama kshanaha. And uttara bhavaha prathamakshana. Praga bhava. Prior non-existence. Uttara abhavaha. posterior non-existence. So, one who says the child is born, he has experience of a birth of a child, he has also experienced an absence of a child in a moment before birth. He has also experienced a moment of absence of a child before birth. And the person who says, who has an experience of a death of another person, well, he can also say that the so and so person is non-existent just in a moment after death. Death is determined by existence of a person before and now non-existence of a person after. Birth also is experienced by a person by non-existence of a child before birth and existence of a child after birth or during birth. So the child is born, it indicates that prior non-existence of the child in a last moment. Last, Charamakshana means in last moment, before. So experiencing the non-existence of a child in a moment just before birth, then that person can say, now the child is born. Experiencing the non-existence of a child in a moment just before birth. And when we say person is dead, that person can say the person is dead, he is experiencing the death. That person experience proves what? The experience of a non-existence of a person in a moment just after death. Now he is no more. Swamiji, he is no more. Non-existence. I have experienced Swamiji. I just talked, Swamiji. He is no more. He is dead. So that person has experienced the existence of a person and non-existence of a person. Right? Birth also. Non-existence of a child before and existence of a child now. That person can say the child is born. Existence of a person before, one who has experience, and he says, well, non-existence of a person. The one person has experienced non-existence and existence. Non-existence and existence. That person only can say regarding birth and death. But you are saying, oh Buddhist, I am momentary. Means what? I know my birth and I know my death also. So I experience my birth because definitely I experience my birth and I experience my death. And I have told you already, who can say about birth and death is who has experienced both. Existence and non-existence. Non-existence of child before, existence of a child now. Well, we can say, yeah, he's born. Non-existence of a person before and then non-existence of a person. Both should be experienced. So I can say now the person is dead. If I say I am born, means I should experience my own non-existence before. And now I experience my existence after. Then I can say I am born. So I experience my non-existence. I, the existent being, right? To experience, I should be existent. So I, the one who is existent, experiences my non-existence before and now existence after. I, the one who is existent now, well, will experience my non-existence after. Means then I can say I am dead. Over. I don't think I have to say anything. And therefore, see this Advaita Makaranda very beautifully said, Tauhi prag uttara bhavaha, prag abhavaha charamakshana. So, prag abhava charamakshanaha janma. This is a definition. Prag abhava charamakshanaha. So, prior non-existence in a last, charamakshanaha, antimakshanaha, in a last moment just before the birth, in a last moment, the person was non-existent and now existent. Oh, he is born. And that one, what is her death? Mrityu pradvamsabhavaha prathamakshanah mrityu. After non-existence, the very first, the experience of a non-existent just after the death. Well, prathamakshanah, in a moment, while the non-existence is there now, well, that also is an experience. Then you can say there is a death. But that kind of a thing is not possible. Other person can say, somebody's birth and somebody's death, well, I can talk about. My own birth and death, I can never talk about. And therefore, well, if you say that some consciousness is there which is momentary, it's another thing. But you say the consciousness means I. They say Atma is consciousness. But they say momentary. Means I am momentary consciousness. Means I am experiencing my birth and I am experiencing my death. One who experiences one's own birth and death can say I existed for so and so and so much time. Otherwise you can't say. To say momentary, you know the length of time between birth and death, which you should have experienced. No one can experience that, and therefore that itself is a contradiction. I experience my non-existence is a contradiction. Either before birth, either after death. And therefore, I hope you understood. And therefore, so this answer we gave. Acharya actually answered this. Anyway, so nobody can experience it, and well, I think this is sufficient. And so I am a momentary. Well, nobody can say. No. Suppose you have a doubt that I am momentary consciousness. Well, every moment a new consciousness arises. That's what they say. So the consciousness which has arisen has now gone. Now new moment, new consciousness arises. So let's say Kshanika Vijnanam number 1 and Kshanika Vijnanam number 2. Kshanika Vijnanam number 2 cannot talk about the momentariness of a Kshanika Vijnanam number 1, because it's a Kshanika Vijnanam number 1 has to tell that I am momentary. Another Kshanika Vijnanam cannot talk about it because it's a new, and therefore it doesn't know anything about the previous thing. To talk about the Kshanika Vijnanam number 1, Kshanika Vijnanam number 2 should have been there. That the Kshanika Vijnanam number 1 has gone. To say that Kshanika Vijnanam number 2 should be there. If Kshanika Vijnanam presence is required to talk about a Kshanika Vijnanam number 1, then it is not Kshanika. It is not Kshanika because it was there at that time also. Now also it is there. And perhaps now in new momentary consciousness arises, that also it can talk. Then definitely, it is not a Kshanika. It is Nityam. It is all the time there. And therefore, Kshanika Vijnanam number 1 is no more there. That's how it is momentary. That kind of a quotation cannot be given by Kshanika Vijnanam number 2. So basically, O Kshanika Vijnani, O Buddhist, you cannot talk about Kshanika Vijnanam at all. Because it itself cannot talk about. The Kshanika Vijnanam number 1 itself cannot talk about. Kshanika Vijnanam number 2 also cannot talk about the first Kshanika Vijnanam. I mean, Kshanika Vijnanam number 2 cannot talk about Kshanika Vijnanam number 1. Kshanika Vijnanam number 1 also cannot talk about itself that I am momentary. And therefore, who will talk? Who will talk about Kshanika Vijnanam? No, some Kshanika Vijnanam will be there who will talk about the flow of all momentary consciousness. Okay, good. Drop the word Kshanika. Because that Kshanika Vijnanam, well, who talks about all Kshanika Vijnanams, flow of Kshanika Vijnanam, that itself is not Kshanikam. It is there all the time to talk about. So better use the word Vijnanam. Okay? Forget about momentary consciousness. The consciousness is all the time there to talk about all momentary consciousness, which itself is not momentary. A consciousness has to be there all the time to talk about all momentary consciousness. If itself is a momentary, how will it talk about all? To talk about, it should be there all the time. If it is there all the time, how it is momentary? Please explain us. And therefore, we are very sorry. Well, this Kshanika Vijnanam itself is not possible. Consciousness is the witness of everything. But there is Kshanika Vijnanam. There is a Kshanika Vijnanam. And there is Vijnanam. Yeah, that we'll talk about it. That's true. So, well, definitely everything what arises in the mind is Kshanikam. That is fine. And that appears conscious, that is also fine. That's fine. And well, so ultimately, we also accept. So Sarvam, they say Sarvam Kshanikam Kshanikam. Well, that we also say. We also say Sarvam Kshanikam Kshanikam. He also says Sarvam Kshanikam Kshanikam. But Sarvam Kshanikam Kshanikam has been talked, well, on the basis of a witness. Who witness that everything is momentary. Whole world is momentary. Every moment it is changing. And therefore, well, there is external world also which is momentary, fine. But there is no external world and there is only internal world in the form of a momentary consciousness. Well, that is not correct. There is an external world which is momentary, that we accept. Momentary means it's constantly changing. That also we say. And the witness of that, the consciousness, the Vijnanam, is always Nityas Sarvagataha Sthanu. Achaloyam Sanatana. So it is Kutastha. It is all the time there. Consciousness is there to witness, to experience everything is momentary. And therefore, the consciousness is not momentary. Other than that, everything is momentary, including every thought in the mind which appears conscious, to which you say it is Kshanika Vijnanam. Well, that is also momentary. So Dehinosmin Yatha Dehe is Kaumaram, Yauvanam, Jara, etc. We also talk about this. Deha also is Kshanikam, etc. It constantly changing. That is okay. But the Dehi, the Sakshi of this entire experience of momentariness, is all the time there. And that is how Deham Pranam, I'm sorry. What is there in our Dakshinamurti Stotram? Is Balyadishvapi Jagradadishu Tatha Sarvasvavasthasapi Vyavruttasu Anuvartamanam. Vyavruttasu, these are all going. Balyadishvapi Jagradadishu Tatha. Jagrat Sapna Sushupti, constantly going. Balyam, etc., Yuva, etc., Praudham, Vruddhavastha, etc., all this. Several avasthas are also there. Sarvasu avasthasu, Vyavruttasu, they are all constantly changing. They are momentary. Anuvartamanami, well, it's a thread present in all the avasthas. Whether it is Jagrat Sapna Sushupti or it is childhood or well, youth or any avastha of a body. Jagradadi indicates a state of a mind. Balyadishvapi indicates a state of a physical body. Well, they, in any avasthas of this body, I am the one. Well, the I is always present in all the avasthas. Anuvartaman. Therefore, that's how I said I was a child and now I am a youth, etc., etc. The very same I who experienced the childhood now experiencing youth. So the I, the consciousness, is not kshanikam. It is all the time there. That is called Atma. So there is no momentary consciousness. And also, Kshanika Vijnani cannot talk about a flow of Kshanika Vijnanam also. That itself is full of flaws. Okay, so there is no flow. To talk about a flow, well, some Vijnanam should be there to say that, well, it is constantly flowing. Because any Kshanika Vijnanam, any consciousness which arises is momentary, stays for a moment and dies out. Then, well, what arises, a new one doesn't know that there was a previous Kshanika Vijnanam. He doesn't know. And that also is a momentary, that also goes. Then the third arises, that also goes. So, every momentary consciousness which arises itself doesn't know that there is a flow. To say there is a flow, there must be consciousness who witnessed the whole flow of a momentary consciousness. And therefore, not only you cannot talk about a Kshanika Vijnanam, you cannot talk about a flow of a Kshanika Vijnanam also. To say there is a flow, somebody should be there who witnessed all momentary consciousness. So, basically, this knowledge about Kshanika Vijnanam, Atma, is full of flaws. This is even Mandukya also, this kind of things are, this is the line of argument against Vijnanavadis. Now, let me talk about something in a Taittiriya Bhashyam. Very beautifully this thing we can understand. The brilliance of Acharya you will find. What is the Atma? And who is a witness of all this, momentary consciousness, etc. It is not particularly Bhashyakara discusses to refute this, but Bhashyakara reveals the principle of a Vedanta here. He says, Tathapi buddhehe upadhi lakshanayah chakshuradi dvaraihi vishayakara parinaminyah ye shabdadi akara avabhasah ते आत्मविज्ञानस्य विषयभूताः उत्पद्यमानाः एव आत्मविज्ञानेन व्याप्ताः उत्पद्यन्ते. Very beautifully. उत्पद्यमानाः अवभासाः आत्मविज्ञानेन व्याप्ताः सन्तः उत्पद्यन्ते. That's the main sentence. All the various thought forms. Now, we won't say Kshanika Vijnana. All the various thought forms of this knowledge involved in this different perception, etc., are born being pervaded by the consciousness. See this principle. So, definitely all the thought forms involved in perception, we are talking about perception right now, well, they are as though they have taken bath in consciousness, full of consciousness, because they basically, Bhashyakara says, utpadyamanaha avabhasaha. Atma Vijnanena Vyaptaha. Like any wave which arises from water is full of water only. Same way, any thought form which arises out of consciousness, there is no source. There is no source. The source of the whole creation is this self. So from the self only they are arising. Then definitely all the thought forms are having consciousness, that reflection, etc. So basically, Atma Vijnanena Vyaptaha Santaha, being pervaded. So Vyaptaha Santaha means being pervaded by the consciousness. I mean, all the thought forms which are really momentary, they arise out of consciousness being pervaded by consciousness. So, Atma Vijnanena, Bhashyakara also used this word, Atma Vijnanena Vyaptaha. So, I think he wants to give answer to this Vijnanavadis. That's what my supposition. Anyway, so all the vrittis are born of this Chaitanya, which is the Swarupa of the vritti. Vritti here could be of any type. If the knower also is a vritti, I have told you. Pramata is a vritti, Pramanam is a vritti, Prameya is a vritti. We will be discussing 10th chapter. And so basically all kinds of thoughts which are involved in the process of knowing, etc., or in any knowing through perception, etc. Well, they are conscious. They are conscious. Tathapi. So even though this Atma basically is of the nature of consciousness, well, it's invariable consciousness, still buddhihi avabhasate. So appears. Understand this. The consciousness which is just which is in the form, Atma which is in the form of a consciousness, so it appears in the form of a buddhi. Naturally, it arises from buddhi. So water only is there, but now water appears as a wave. Same way, the consciousness appears as a buddhi. And therefore, this invariable consciousness appears to assume, and to illumine various forms, akaras. Appear to assume various, akaras mean vishayakara. So, well, it is a shabdakara. Buddhi in the form of a shabda, buddhi in the form of a rupam, buddhi in the form of a, well, rasakara vritti, any kind of a vritti. Because we are talking about perception. So Atma alone, which is invariable consciousness, alone appears in the variable form, momentary form. And that momentary forms are of 5 types. We generally say in perception is shabdakara and rasakara and all that. And so, Bhashyakara says that. So, tathapi buddhehe upadhi lakshanaya. That part I will explain later. Chakshuradi dvaraihi, that also I will explain later. Vishayakara parinaminyaha ye shabdadi akara avabhasaha. Avabhasaha. So, this avabhasa means all this, various thoughts. Why Bhashyakara uses the word avabhasa? Because every thought appears conscious. As it arises from consciousness, well, it is full of consciousness. With a reflected consciousness, I am saying. So every thought is full of consciousness. That's how Bhashyakara uses the word avabhasaha. So basically, these are the various thought forms, well, of knowledge, basically, because they are conscious, involved in that different perceptions. They are all pervaded by this consciousness, invariable consciousness. And and so Shabdadi Vishayakara, Parinaminyaha. So Buddhi Parinaminyaha. Buddhi alone assumes. Atma alone appears in the form of various thought forms. But what type of various thought forms are these Shabda, etc.? Means Buddhi alone takes a different form. Buddhi alone takes in form of Shabdakara Vritti, and then we'll have a Rasakara Vritti. So Vishayakara Parinaminyaha. And also, how does, so Buddhi assumes these different forms through what? Tat Vishayakara Parinamiya. Tat Vishaya means depending upon modifying into the respective forms of objects, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. So all Parinama means basically is a Vritti Vikara. Every thought keeps changing, and that is a Buddhi's Vikara only. In keeping with what? In keeping with the Vishayas. But how Vishayas are different now? Because Vishayas are different through the different because of the sense depending upon the sense organ. So, well, definitely Buddhi has assumed a Shabdakara. Buddhi is transformed into a Shabdakara Vritti, depending upon the object's Shabda. And that Shabda which has come through the sense organ, and which is ear. So, well, so how do you get the objects? Well, basically because Chakshuradi Indriya Dvaraihi, through the means of eyes, ears, etc., the senses are the means of getting the knowledge of various objects, and that's how the part knowledge and this knowledge, etc., all arises. So this is how the whole thing is. And what is this Buddhi which arises from the consciousness? What is this Buddhi? It says Upadhi Lakshanaya. See, Bhashyakara. Upadi Lakshanaya Buddhya. So, Buddhi is a Upadi of a Atma, consciousness. That's all. This is the problem with them. Well, Upadi means what? Well, it is, Upadi is something, well, that whose attribute appear to be in Upahita. That's called Upadi. Like, there is they call Japa Kusuma, I think, hibiscus, I think. And then there is a crystal. So the attributes of the hibiscus appears in crystal. Under that condition, this hibiscus is called a Upadi of a crystal. That's all. Why this way you define? Because Upa Samipe Sthitva Sriyan Gunan Adhatte iti Upadi. Upa plus Adihi. So which is very near to the Upahita. This Upadi is something which is near to the Upahita, and Sviyan Gunan, one's own attributes, superimposes upon the Upahita. And then this particular object is called Upadi. So Bhashyakara has used this word. Upadi Lakshanayaha Buddhyaha. So this Upadi, which is in the form of, which is a Buddhi, arises from consciousness and then superimposes own attributes upon Atma. So basically that's how the crystal appears red, right? In case of, suppose hibiscus is red, then crystal appears red. So crystal becomes red without becoming red. This is, crystal becomes red without becoming red. One who understands that it is a crystal, even though it's just a crystal, colorless crystal, even though it appears in red color, is a Jnana Nishtha with reference to the crystal. One who knows that it is a crystal, and it is a crystal only, but it is colorless, and it appears in the form of a red color, so it appears red, is a Jnana Nishtha. So basically, one who sees red crystal but does not take the crystal as red, his knowledge about the crystal is crystal clear. So that we have to say like this, right? This is how it is. So here also Jnana Nishtha is, even though constantly throughout the Prarabdha is there, Upadhi is going to superimpose the attributes upon the Atma, which is close, so close to the Upadhi. My God, non-separate. The Upadhis are non-separate from the Atma, because Upadhis cannot stand, cannot exist. Upadhi cannot exist independent of Atma. That is the Mithyatvam of the Upadhi. Anything which borrows existence from a thing, is always non-separate from that thing. And therefore Upadhi, that is how Upadhi, so near, so close to Atma, and therefore superimpose one's own attributes. Gender and sex and whatever, color and all. Several things. Height and weight and everything. Atma has a 5 foot 6 inch height, right? Atma is 160 pounds. Yeah, that's how we say. I means Atma. This is the meaning. I means just pure consciousness. There is no meaning of I other than this. And just pure consciousness means no attributes. Any attribute is impurity. Nirdosham hi samam Brahma. Brahman is basically nirdosham, free from dosha, defects, impurities, free from attributes. Any attribute superimposed upon Atma proves its status as impurity, which is not there. You assume. Atma has no gender. Atma has no color. Atma has no weight. Atma has no dimension, no height. no width, all are superimposed. Buddhi. We are answering to these people. Buddhi upadhi. Very beautifully said. Buddhehe upadhi lakshanaya. And therefore, definitely, so this the attribute of that red color belongs to the flower upadhi. So same way, all the thought modifications. Why modifications? Because buddhi transforms. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa constantly undergoes modification. So all the thought modification of buddhi, which is upadhi of Atma, are basically objects of Atma. Atma Vijnanam. And so objects of the self, and Atma is a Sakshi with reference to all of them. But all these thoughts, avabhasaha, while remaining as object of consciousness, they arise being pervaded by consciousness. So they are not just only objects of consciousness, they have their being in consciousness. That's how all the thought modifications appear conscious, and which is momentary also. And Buddhas have taken that itself as Atma because they are conscious. And therefore, they say this momentary consciousness is nothing but there are various thought forms arising out of consciousness, pervaded by consciousness, non-separate from the consciousness, while ultimately appears continuously, appears momentary. Well, and so that is how a consciousness or Atma has been taken by them as a momentary. And this consciousness is actually never born, it's a Sakshi, it has no Parinama, but appears to be born because the Buddhist dharma have been superimposed upon the real self. Its momentariness also is superimposed upon the Sakshi, and therefore definitely we feel that as though the consciousness is born every moment. It's actually the Buddhi which arises out from this consciousness, has a momentary nature. It undergoes transformation continuously, and it also has appears conscious. Well, but that buddhi has been really superimposed upon the Atma being a upadhi, and therefore all the attributes of the buddhi also are superimposed, and therefore, well, buddhi's attribute is it is momentary, and so that momentariness also is superimposed upon the sakshi consciousness. Therefore, chaitanyam or consciousness is satyam. The thought modifications actually are mithya. They appear momentary. They are momentary, but consciousness is not momentary. Who witness all these thoughts, etc., is not momentary. So this is how this part of the Taittiriya was little relevant. So I took it. This is a Vedantic principle. Now, yeah. So so this is how we argued with Vijnanavadis, and we proved our point that there is an external world. One thing we proved. Second thing we said, the Atma is not Kshanika Vijnanam, and Atma definitely appears Kshanikam due to a Kshanikatvam of a Upadhi called Buddhi that is superimposed upon the Atma because it is non-separate from the Atma, because it arises from the Atma. Its existence, the very existence of the Buddhi is due to Atma, and therefore being so near, so close, non-separate, well, its Kshanikatvam also is superimposed upon the Atma, who is a Sakshi, who is never born, who is Nityam, and now same, the Atma will appears as a Kshanikam. And therefore, this is the way we answered. Anyway, so Shankaracharya says, well, Kshanika Vijnanam is not possible. Flow of Kshanikam Vijnanam also you cannot talk about, and Atma is Nitya. So this is all through Pramana. Now, the original question I am reminding you is this regarding external world, when we said that it is, well, through pratyaksha, well, it is proven that there is external world, etc. So it is ultimately anything which is existent or a non-existent is always based on a pramana. And now Shankaracharya says, so, I mean, the evidence of the whole creation is based on a pramana. Existence of the whole creation is based on a pramana. Pramana proves the evidence of the given thing. And evidence of a pramana is, well, given by Sakshi, but not directly. There is a portion which is very important, which I want to discuss, which Bhashyakara has discussed in Adhyasa Bhashyam of a Brahma Sutra. And I am not going into Bhashyam there because it's a very, very long Bhashyam, but I am giving you a very gist of that. Through Adhyasa, the evidence of pramana is we are getting. So, something is existent or non-existent, of course, on the basis of evidence of pramana. But presupposition of a knowledge of pramana or evidence of a pramana is due to adhyasa. And how it is? Well, pramana actually proves a prameya. So I can use of a pramana that is in my choice, definitely. Pramana pravritti takes place, well, definitely it's my choice. But once pramana is in operation and contacts a object, prameya, there is no free will. To choose a pramana, there is definitely, I have a free will. Like whether to see or not to see, it is in my hand. But suppose I open my eyes, I choose and I open my eyes to see an object. Once pramana starts its function, pravritti, and contact an object, at that time in a process, well, the will is suspended. There is no will. So, when knowledge takes place, definitely there is no free will. To operate the particular pramana or not, to gain, for gaining a certain knowledge, I have to operate this, to gain a knowledge or not itself is in my hand. But once I choose to know a particular thing, I have no choice to operate, I have no choice over pramana. Suppose I want to see a particular object, then I have no choice that I should use sometime ears and some, because my eyes are tired now, let me use my ears. That also I have no choice. Whether to see or not, well, that's my choice. But if I decide to see a certain thing, then accordingly I have to choose a pramana. Actually there is no choice in a pramana. That's one thing. Now that evidence of the pramana itself is through adhyasa. Sakshi, we say, of course, reveals pramana, etc. But actually Sakshi reveals a pramata, and pramata will reveal the pramana, etc. That is what I want to talk about. So pramana pravritti, pramanam indriyas, even though I am not a pramata as such, but the pramata is also superimposed, as I said you right now. And then pramana pravritti takes place. Pramata selects a pramana, and then accordingly knowledge takes place. So even the perceptual knowledge which takes place is also through a pramana. And so that particular pramana, that sense organ basically in a perception, is decided by a pramata. So pramata is required ultimately to give an evidence of pramana. That's what I want to convey. Pramata is required. Ultimately it will be Sakshi only, but then here in between, Sakshi does not reveal pramana directly. Sakshi reveals pramata. Sakshi reveals ahamvritti. Ahamvritti will be definitely illumined by the Sakshi, and that becomes a pramata, and then pramata reveals pramana, and the pramana reveals the prameya. This is a process. So now pramata is required. How pramata is born? Through adhyasa. That's a very beautiful thing talked about in Brahma Sutra. So And I think I will that topic of little bit of adhyasa portion I will talk about it day after tomorrow because time is over now. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.